Thank you. Thank you for the introduction. And it's an honor and a pleasure to moderate this panel, very distinguished panel. Finance, of course, is extremely important because that is what makes projects move, right? And finance is inherently conservative, limited by regulations, and it is up to the industry, up to policymakers to ensure that those regulations do not limit projects from moving ahead. We have seen that, for example, in case of blended finance, it is quite challenging in India, right? Especially when private sector players want to do blended finance for various regulatory reasons, right? So we often hear the fact that there is finance. It is up to the proponents. It's up to the folks who propose projects to leverage on that finance. But there is also the challenge that climate finance, green finance, sustainable finance, we are competing against every other nation in the world, right? So while money is available, what is the project pipeline or the unique value proposition that we offer to the world so that finance can flow into India and flow into green, sustainable sectors, including green hydrogen? So with that, let me begin with a panel discussion. I first want to ask. So let me go, from my left to the end. So Surbhi, who's a senior energy specialist from World Bank, you know that hydrogen is a very capital-intensive kind of sector. What if innovative financing structures has MDBs come up with to finance hydrogen globally or in India?
Thank you so much, and good afternoon, everyone. I would like to, step back a little bit in the sense that the MDBs here play a very different role in the sense of how the ecosystem as well as the launch pad for the future commercial investments can come in. So the principles that we follow is that we absorb the first mover risk. So, as we are developing our own engagements in the green hydrogen space, what we have realized is that the financial intermediaries or the institutions are not yet very willing to undertake the technological risks. Even if they are charging huge premiums. And this is where the role of the development bankers become very important because we can mobilize some of the concessional financing to bring together the blended products, bring down the cost wherever the higher risks are associated by the market, and then deliver a product which is acceptable commercially. I would like to emphasize on the word commercial because the loan ultimately is a loan, whether it comes from the World Bank or from other intermediaries. So we ensure that the project demonstrates commercial viability. Now, building on that particular principle is where we then customize our, financing product, etc. So, for instance, if I pick up green hydrogen only, I don't know if how many of you are aware about, but the World Bank has already provided $3 billion of support to the government of India on scaling up national green hydrogen missions objectives as well as to support the renewable energy sector, which is important for the green hydrogen. It was done in the tranches of 1.5 billion each. But that was very early stage, like 2 years ago, when the ecosystem was still very, very nascent and the policies and regulations weren't still ripe. Now we have seen a lot of guidelines and a lot of policies, and subsequently tenders have come up. We are now looking at specific investments. And when we talk about investments, going back to the principle that I mentioned, to make it commercially viable, what is that is required? Should it be pure, investment project? Should it be having certain kind of guarantee instruments associated with it? So what we do is we follow a rigorous approach to assess the risks, to identify what mitigation measures will fly, what is the right time to introduce those mitigation measures, because we do not also want to distort the market by bringing certain things which are not required or which may distort it later. So based on a lot of things is that we decide on how we should proceed. For green hydrogen specifically, we are very We're much aggressively looking at concessional pots of money, which could be blended with our financing to support the sector as a whole to invest in a larger project so that the I would say the utility of these technology can be established in the country. So yeah, of course, beginning with blended financing and then to moving on to the sophisticated products like guarantee instruments and all is what we at the moment are thinking. But of course, this is work in progress every day with new developments. The strategies are aligning. So are we. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think it's encouraging that the World Bank is putting uh, money into the green hydrogen sector in India, and hopefully that pot can grow. Now, moving to Dr. Ellangovan, who's MD of Kerala Infrastructure Fund Management Limited. Sir, Kerala is known for its focus on sustainable development. How do you ensure that infrastructure projects funded, managed by KAFML align with these sustainability goals while still fostering economic growth?
Thank you. As was mentioned, I'm the MD of Kerala Infrastructure Fund Management Limited. This is an alternate investment fund launched by Government of Kerala. Not many people know about this. This is a 1,200 crore fund where Government of Kerala's entity called Kerala Infrastructure Investment Fund Board has invested 30%. In fact, KIBBI is the sponsor of the fund. The remaining 70% will come from the private equity. We are now in the process of soliciting investments, and we have very, very strong encouraging thing from both institutional investors as well as from the high net worth individuals. As all of you know, Kerala holds a large number of HNIs in the Middle East. So we are now on the way to solicit this fund. We already have about 180 crore into the kitty. The remaining will be solicited before next May 2026. Having said this, one of the objectives of this fund is to basically finance infrastructure in Kerala. And energy sector is a very strong as a driver of this economy. Because as I was mentioning elsewhere, yesterday in Mumbai, Kerala's wind energy is not, wind energy is not tapped. We have two gaps in the Western Ghats. One is called Palghat Gap, other is called Lachankoil Gap. On the other side of the border, there has been a number of windmills. So we are into the process of putting up a 16 megawatt wind energy there in Palghat. Coming to solar energy, again, we have huge water bodies which are left unattended too. We may not have land, but we have huge water bodies. Floating solar is a huge option. Government of Kerala has constituted a committee under Chief Secretary, a task force, to identify, to generate 3,000 megawatt of solar energy from floating quota. Now, having said this, the fund, basically the question is like, how do we ensure that when we fund, we always ensure that the climate and ESG norms. Yes, when we take up a projects, we always ensure that this project is ESG norms. For instance, I have another hat. I am also the MD of a company called INCAL. INCAL is Infrastructure Kerala Limited. That is an executing body, whereas KIFML is a fundraising body. Now, INCAL, as of now, we are implementing 2,300 crore worth of projects, all civil constructions for Government of Kerala. Basically, healthcare sectors, like medical colleges, district hospitals, taluk hospitals, and also for the Department of Tourism, we are doing a lot of Muziris site constructions, all heritage constructions. All projects, we have a vetting scale. It has to comply with the ESG norms. Because we have a special consultant who goes through the DPR. In fact, the cost of the construction has gone up in some of the projects tremendously because of the ESG norms. Nevertheless, we insist on that. We also go for the Griha, should be Griha compliant. In fact, one of the largest building which we have constructed in Cochin, called Cochin Cancer Research Center, has received an award from EDGE Consortium. Now, EDGE gives consortium award only because of the conservation of energy. So therefore, to make it very brief, if you want to have a project in Kerala, here you have a fund. Those who want to invest in the fund can invest in multiples of 1 crore. We have up to 1,020 crore gap now. We are already talking to institutional investors. And believe me, 60 to 70% of this will go to renewable energy. Will go to energy sector. We have plans to put up EV charging stations across the state. And we have plans to create waste to energy project. We are talking to the department and governments to finalize the sort of viability gap. So therefore, the point I'm trying to say is that fund is available and executing agency is available. We are very conscious about the environmental change. As all of you would agree, that the largest conversion of the IC engine into EV engine is in Kerala. That is not because of government policies or government pressures. It is because of citizens' choice. People here, on their own, try to become very environment friendly. So there's a huge scope for people here, both project proponents, the financiers, as well as individual investors to come to Kerala and see that you will reap the benefits of energy growth, energy sector growth in this. So probably, yes, that's the introductory remark for me. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I think, what I always find interesting about projects in Kerala is the retail participation. So in your fund as well, you're opening it up for high net worth individuals, individuals who can actually invest in the well-being and development of Kerala. And similarly, I think for Cochin Airport as well, there's a lot of individual shareholding from not even high net worth individuals. I think even with low net worth, that you can buy shares in Cochin Airport and so on, right? So that's a very unique aspect about projects, infrastructure funds in Kerala. Now moving on to Stefan, who's the head of energy for KFW Development Bank. Stefan, how has KFW contributed to the green energy transition in India so far? And how do you foresee the future of international cooperation between Germany and India? Maybe you can also talk about subnational projects which KFW has funded, because that's very relevant for Kerala as well, right? So please.
Yes, thank you very much. It's a big pleasure to be here. Regarding the support of KfW Development Bank here in India, I can say that we supported the green energy transition along the entire renewable energy value chain. So we financed solar parks, wind parks. I think maybe I can get this micro. Yeah. So we financed so far solar parks, wind parks, hydropower projects. We also support the Green Energy Corridor program in India, GC1, GC2. For instance, one project is here also in Kerala. So we have one project with KCB to finance transmission lines and substations. And then we also support the RDSS, the Revamped Distribution Sector Scheme. So quite a lot of investments in this regard through lines of credit with REC, PFC, and we are supporting as well one policy-based loan with the Ministry of Power in this regard. Then we are also quite active with regard to energy efficiency. So we are financing a couple of projects with regard to the housing sector, with regard to the agriculture sector, and also energy efficiency projects with small and medium-sized enterprises. So this is what we are doing at the moment. All in all, we have committed 5.4 billion euros so far for the green energy transition here in India, contributing to the installation of 8.3 gigawatt of RE generation capacity and more than 17 million CO2 emission savings. In the future, the focus will be different. We have the feeling that in many regards, India does not need to support under the Indo-German cooperation for large solar parks, large wind parks anymore. So that's why we will be focusing in particular on storage, battery storage, of course, can be also PSP, and land-saving solar technologies. Talking, for instance, about floating solar. This is one potential option for us. It can be also agrivoltaics. So we try to integrate also more and more agri-PV projects in our lines of credit with state-owned financial institutions here in India. And then a new topic, which is not so advanced at the moment in India, are the old mining lands. So we are looking at mining land to support also solar parks in this area. So this is kind of a new direction. And of course, green hydrogen is important. So we are providing a specific politics development fund in this regard. And I can also talk about it later in case it's of interest. Yeah, but all in all, we have quite a lot of projects at state level. I mentioned our loan with KSEB here in Kerala, but we're also having projects, for instance, in Himachal Pradesh, hydropower plant. We have this solar park, big solar park with Marjenko, or big solar park in West Bengal. So quite a lot of projects at state level. Thanks.
Maybe someone from the organizers can come and give us another mic.
Not working.
Is that working? Okay.
I think
seems
so.
to be working. Yeah.
Can you all hear me?
Yeah. I think so. It's all right. Thanks for that, Stefan. I think the additionality point which you spoke about how utility scale solar doesn't require concessional or development financing anymore in India. That's important, and it's good to know that development banks are looking at additionality when it comes to funding projects. And also, I think there's a lot of scope for KFW to fund more projects in Kerala from renewable energy and from a green hydrogen perspective. Moving to Mr. Sanjay Vishwanathan, Chairman and CEO of AdiGroupè. So let's focus on a specific instrument here, which we haven't discussed much in terms of energy infrastructure. Invites, right? Infrastructure investment trusts. Why should invites be used to finance clean energy? Can you provide examples of successful implementation of invites in green energy in India or globally?
Sure. Thank you. Can you all hear me? Great. Thank you for that question, Arun. Let me give a bit of introduction to us, because in a way we are a well-kept secret. AdiGroupè started life, believe it or not, based on an inspiration here in Kochi, which is where we have a place called Kaladi, which is the birthplace of Adi Shankara, the famous Hindu philosopher saint not far from here. So for us at AdiGroupè to make this investment in energy in the state of Kerala is in many ways life coming a full circle. And therefore we are extremely excited to be part of the redevelopment, rejuvenation, and regeneration of the state of Kerala. So the group has two parts. We are roughly about $4.5 billion family office and another $7 billion balance sheet. The areas that we are now focused on in what I call Adi 2.0 is very much to be pillars of India's economy. Because the vision that I laid out to our group about 4 years ago was we want to be known as the Tatas of the 21st century. And what that means is, like the Tatas, we're pillars of the society. But why Adi is because we want to be agile, nimble, and truly flexible in how we engage. So the model that we want to bring to Kerala, which I think Kerala in many ways, through the leadership of Sri Jyotilal in power sector, I think can become what I call the Kerala model, right? So we'd like InvITs in renewable energy and green to be known as the Kerala model. And what that means is, one, to have a permanent capital allocated to the state. Second is to have institutions as well as retail as a part of it, not just financial sponsors like us. Third is to provide annuity income, which is at least 30 to 40% higher than the BSE index. Today, NSE BSE gives you between 12 to 14%. We can provide, I think, through InvITs, if we structure it right, anywhere between 18 to 21%. Now that is significant if we want to create employment. Because where we want to go with InvITs in Kerala is not just focus on solar from a renewable perspective, but also storage. And storage, I think, has a fantastic opportunity for us to create local entrepreneurs. And Kerala, after all, is a state of local entrepreneurs. And that's where I think there's a big opportunity for us. So I think we've done a lot of homework on this, and we think we're ready to bring an InvIT model which will have two parts to it. One is focused on solar and storage, the second on hydro, because believe it or not, Kerala is also a state that is quite advanced and sophisticated and mature with their hydel capacity. Now, InvITs at the end of the day can provide not just stable returns, but also governance. Because unlike some of the other fund structures, in InvITs you actually have a triple layer of governance. You have a trustee, you have the project manager, and then you have the investment manager. These are all institutions. And therefore, a model that would be right for India, which can actually be born here in Kerala, is a world-class InvIT model focused on renewable energy, which India needs. India has got some very good, again, to your point, Arun, India has had some good case studies on InvITs. For example, InGrid, which is the grid InvIT, has been returning about 12%. KKR was the original sponsor. Of course, now it's become much larger. It's almost $4 billion in size. And they've done it in grid. So if they could do it in grid, you can quite easily do it in the energy production as well. So I want to summarize by saying that, like all investment instruments, InvIT will also have risks, no question, because the biggest risk, as we were talking offline, and our esteemed panel here, member Surbhi Goyal of World Bank, correctly raised, the issue has always been with Indian power projects not being completed on time, which I can use, Stefan echoed from a KfW perspective. I think that is spot on. And this is where, again, InvIT can make a difference, because 60% of InvIT capital is actually used for existing projects that is monetized. So state governments can now monetize that, get capital that they can now use for other purposes for state development. And 40% is used for the improvements and redevelopments of existing power projects. So Idiki, for example, you want to expand, we could do that. Renewable energy, solar, for example, you have about 600 megawatts, we can double that, right? BESS, which is about 150 megawatts, we can treble that, right? We can create about 2 million entrepreneurs on this platform. So I think there is a fantastic opportunity. The timing is perfect. And I think with visionary state administration we have in power and a government under the current chief minister, with the right multilaterals like World Bank and KfW and ADB, and of course a fantastic partner in Inkel. And, Ellangovan, we see you as a key partner because I think Inkel can be a very good project manager for this. And if we come in as a trustee with as a project management, and then we bring the right institutional and sponsor group with the right retail participation at about 25%, having an in perpetuity fund can become a real game changer for the state. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that was quite a convincing pitch for InvITs in Kerala. Thanks for that, Sanjay ji. But maybe you might want to rebrand that. The Kerala model already exists. So there must be, maybe you can think on the brand name a little bit more, but quite interesting. Moving on to Afeena Ashfaque, who's the Associate Director for Partnerships, SET Fund. We were talking about MDBs, we were talking about InvITs, infrastructure funds, and so on. But now we come to venture philanthropy, right? So what is venture philanthropy? And, tell me something about the activities of SET Fund in India, maybe with a focus on infrastructure or clean energy.
Great. First of all, thank you so much. This is a great opportunity. I think ACS Jyotilalji and CEO Nerd has put together a great event. And also, I think events like these create opportunities for all of us to meet, exchange ideas. So this is so important and just rightly timed. So thank you so much again. I will talk a little bit about SEDFund. So SEDFund basically stands for Sustainability, Equity, and Diversity. It's a venture philanthropy, and as the name stands, we support a lot of new and innovative ideas and projects. Is it okay? Can you hear me? Yeah. So the way we approach our approach is three-pronged. First, so our mandate is energy transition. So we do work on energy transition and not on development. Arun, just a little bit of clarity on that. Anything and everything to do with energy transition is our mandate. We work with our technical assistance partners. So how we work is we support our partners who then further support governments and private sector in order to meet their clean energy ambitions. And we have already been working with multiple states. What we believe is states are the powerhouse. They are pivotal in actually achieving the country's net zero target. And as you see, like states like Kerala, they already have put in their net zero targets way before, the country's targets. So these are very aspiring stories and should be replicated. Coming back to how we work, and I mentioned earlier that the way we do is our approach is three-pronged. First, we believe in creating demand. First approach is, unless and until there's demand, nothing else. We'll not be talking about any of these things. Once demand is created, then we need to have a strong pipeline of these clean energy projects, which should come in. And for these projects to be actually actionable, then we work on how can we bring in financing for these projects. So this is the overall ecosystem, how we work. We have been supporting multiple startups. We do not support individual startups, but we support incubation and accelerators who can then further support startups. And we are actually, one of the examples on hydrogen is we are supporting an organization called Zinteo. It's a boutique consulting firm based out of Gurgaon. And they have come up with this program called Energy Leap, where there's a whole ecosystem of hydrogen startups is what we are supporting. So one is the money also needs to go in those R&Ds, innovations, from ideas to actually ideas to actually like a prototype or an idealization, and then it has to be further adopted. So giving them legs is another thing. So when we talk about all this, we also need to see how private sector can play a huge role in this, right? All these ideas which exist, and there are multiple ideas which exist on multiple platforms on utility scale, on hydrogen, talk about anything, there are startups, they're brilliant minds which exist in India, right? But they need to be adopted, right? So we also try and support how private sector can come and play a role and then adopt them, create pilot projects, or just to see where's the potential. Maybe they didn't actually need the solution which already exists. Why would you reinvent the wheel, right? So just go on that. I'm taking a lot of time. I can give more examples as we go further.
Sure. I think that bridge between startups, in order for them to cross from the minimum viable product to a commercial mass scale application, that is something critical. And I think, that's a valuable service. Now, we have 16 minutes on the clock now. So I request for the next round, very briefly, your answers. And then maybe we can take one or two questions from the audience as well, right? So back to Surbhi. So I'm going to put you in a bit of a spot now. What role do you see transition financing taking in clean energy sector and hydrogen? Because you're not going to green hydrogen is, of course, a dream, which is becoming reality. But there will also be other shades of hydrogen in between, right, as the supply chain develops. And similarly for clean energy as well, right? There's going to be a role played by transition finance. What do you envisage that as?
Thank you for that lovely question. Always tough to answer, so I will be a bit diplomatic here. So in the sense that when we talk about transition financing, of course, we all acknowledge that the shifts in the technologies won't happen overnight. There has to be some kind of transition phasing of the technologies. And these are capex intensive, activities. So we won't expect the industries to all of a sudden over a period of, couple of years just shift around. So, for instance, if I can pick up a particular example from, one of the works that we've done with PNGRB, which is Petroleum and Natural Gas Regulatory Board, to see that how pipelines can become an integral part of the transition story. And the loud and clear message that we are getting from that particular work with PNGRB is that the pipelines that are currently being used for natural gas transmission should be started to have blending opportunities for hydrogen, and gradually then figuring it out whether it makes commercial sense to have 100% hydrogen pipelines within India. Ultimately, it's taxpayers' money, so whatever we invest, we need to ensure that the commercial viability and the technical feasibility have to be maintained for the same. But beyond that, also, when we have done a similar kind of technical due diligence of one of the steel power projects, not steel projects, there also we have identified a similar kind of transition planning that when we look at hydrogen infusion in the direct reduction iron making process, there also we have seen that the blending should be likely to come up first than immediate shift towards the 100% H2DRI, unless we're talking about the newer units, of course. But everything has a macroeconomic impact. If we talk about steel, any incremental price could have expensive construction cost happening. So we have to think from all the perspectives. So transition finance from that perspective becomes very important. How World Bank can play a role, I think it will needs to be deliberated further, because we have very strict mandates coming from our board members. Our board members are like various countries. So factoring in the, I would say different kind of opinions and a tussle of war between what transition financing means to all of them, accordingly, we will take it forward. But having said so, we are very open to consider if it makes sense. We should be taking it forward for the discussions and then making a case for the same. But beyond that, I think transition is not just about one fuel to another. It is also about how we use our current assets. So I was talking to our fellow panelist in the morning that how, for instance, hydropower can make a very critical transition story. At the moment, hydropower is not being utilized as it should to complement the non-hydro RE. It is being, regulated asset, remunerated by the regulators for the generation. But can we somehow shift the generator and use the water stored in these hydropower projects, similar to what battery storage could have done in another case, and provide those signals that hydro comes in when the grid is more, I would say, vulnerable to the variability of the non-hydro RE. So bringing together an aggregator or a virtual power plant kind of a concept, bringing hydro as a complementary resource to non-hydro RE, similar kind of transition stories need to be built through. How we can utilize them, how we can replicate them. I think this is all what is it about.
Thank you. Now, moving to Dr. Ellangovan. In the previous panel, the MD of CSL spoke about how you need to bring a pipeline of projects, right? So a lot of governments, state government, central government, they're challenging with the pipelining issue. You have the national infrastructure pipeline, of course, but at a state level or a ULB level, and especially for climate projects, green projects, how are you tackling the challenge of origination of pipelining projects and deciding which projects to fund?
That's an excellent question. In fact, an infrastructure fund management company, we had engaged Grant Thornton Bharat to do a sector profiling. See, basically, Kerala cannot attract investment in every sector like any other state. Kerala is a niche state. Certain things can only be done here, which are basically high-tech, capital-intensive, highly skilled industries. So this Grant Thornton Bharat has brought out a document, which I can always share with you. Basically profiling the sectors in Kerala for investments, keeping in mind the future needs of the population in the state. There, one of the prominent pipeline is about energy sector. That's what I said in my earlier talk. Energy sector is going to be one of the prime drivers of the economy of the state. We have untapped potentials. We have wind, we have solar, We've got coastal, basically thermal energy. I mean, we have the ocean wave, which is totally untapped. Now, that way, we already got around 7 projects in pipeline for the company, not for the state. 7 projects worth about 1,000 crores. These are essentially solar and wind, maybe in the ratio of say 40-60. 40 is wind and 60 is solar. So one thing which we have done is engaging a consultant and understanding this for the company, but mainly not for the state. The second thing what we are trying to do is basically do a market intelligence. We have an MOU with institution like Kerala State Industrial Development Corporation, and one of the sponsors of the fund itself is called Kerala Financial Corporations, Kerala State Industrial Enterprises. They are all the sponsors of this fund. So they will be basically doing the financing. For instance, KSIDC gives the seed funding. Then after that, who else is going to look after them? They go to the bank, they may fall between the stools. That's where this fund wants to get in. In order to give with a continuum of financial assistance, we have the second set of thinking that we source these projects from these government entities. The third most important is basically like attending the conferences and symposias and basically getting into some sort of market intelligence by ourselves. We have a very good team, basically deal team. They are into deal sourcing. That is, both in fact, my chief investment officer and investment associate are there in this audience. So they do the deal sourcing both for the venture capital aspect of smaller size startups, as well as for infra projects of bigger size, say 100 and 200 crores. So that is one word about one reply about the last question also. How do we fund? As I said, the infrastructure investment fund is a category 2 fund of SEBI-registered fund. Being a category 2 fund, we have a flexibility to offer debt cum equity. Just by giving debt funding, many projects are finding usually difficult to find resources. So we have the flexibility to do a mezzanine funding by blending equity and debt. By giving this, the investors' confidence goes up quite well. And returns from the project is also quite stable and quite early on. And the last word is also about, like what Mr. Sanjay said, we also have the strategy to basically take over the brownfield projects to expand it and modernize it. So the fund is that way well stabilized from the point of investors to take care of the investment interest. We have options to do the brownfield projects, blending finance, and so deal sourcing through very logical and scientific exercise, and therefore so our casualty rate will be very, very low. So far, it has been very low. We are treading a very cautious path with the government funding 30%, there's its own limitations. That's where we are positioning ourselves today. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Ellangovan. Moving to Stefan, and briefly, considering the capital-intensive nature of green hydrogen infrastructure, does KFW offer financial products to enable GH2 projects?
Thank you, Arun. Yes, indeed, we provide a very specific fund in this regard, the so-called Power-to-X Development Fund. The second call for expression of interest was open until last week. And with this fund, the government of Germany is supporting the ramp up of Power-to-X projects, green hydrogen and green ammonia projects. And the fund has all in all 270 million euro grant funds. And these funds can be assessed by 7 partner countries. India is one of the partner countries. And luckily, we are quite happy that we can say that also in the second call for expression of interest, quite a lot of interest came from Indian companies, private and also state-owned companies. So we received 13 project proposals for this viability gap funding. So up to 30 million euro per project are there. And we are quite optimistic that in addition to the subsidies here in India, this can actually bring down the cost significantly. And in addition to this viability gap funding, we can also provide, of course, our reduced interest loans. So this makes it very attractive. And in case we are talking about very large projects, we would be very interested also to work together with World Bank, ADB, of course, and we can bring in our commercial arm, the KfW IBEX Bank. I think there are quite a lot of possibilities, but I think this Power to X Development Fund is really interesting also for our partners here in India. And the third call for expression of interest will start most likely next year. So there will be some other opportunities, because I can also imagine that some of the companies present here need some further time to prepare to get closer to, let's say, FID.
So this call for interest, is it still open for companies?
The second call for expression of interest closed last week. We received 13 projects from Indian companies.
Will you be opening it again next year?
Yeah, we think it will be opened most likely next year, beginning of next year.
Okay, so that's for entrepreneurs and companies present here. You might want to check their website, KFW's website. Thank you. Over to Sanjay. So let's talk a little bit more about invites, but briefly. How do they compare with traditional financing? Dr. Ellangovan spoke about equity and debt, right? So how do they compare with those traditional sources of financing?
That's a great question, Arun. I would say three big differences between InvITs and traditional financing. One is InvITs have an ability to recycle that capital for projects, whereas traditional financing will take a return on equity or return on the debt and take the capital back. The capital is not reinvested in additional, say, redevelopment or brownfield engagements and so on. Right? So that's a big difference, because this is a pool of capital that is available for that thesis. And once the thesis has been set, then you don't have to go back to the well again for new capital. Right? Number one. Number two is, while traditional financing can provide higher returns, there is significant volatility of it, because the parameters that traditional financing depends on is essentially exposed to market forces. Whereas in InvIT financing, you have stable income that comes in from what is long-term utilities, and therefore one can predict what the returns would be over time, rather than have a certain volatility to it. And that's a big difference, especially when you think about retail investors. It's a big sense of security. The third part is what I call the opportunity for a financial instrument to be part of a nation's energy security. Because we all know energy security is going to be the overriding theme through this century. InvITs, because of the size, scale, depth, and sustainability of capital, will ensure that a nation can actually achieve energy security with it. And therefore, I'd say these are the three big reasons why they would trump traditional financing.
Thank you. Afeena, can you share some success stories from the projects that SET Fund has funded of mobilizing concessional finance for large-scale private sector investments in clean energy?
Yeah. So about a couple of years ago, we supported an organization called Encourage Capital. And this is for them, they were trying to identify clusters for MSMEs for solar rooftop potential financing. Like, is there potential? What do we do? What do we not do? But this was still, they did not have that initial money to at least even do the research or start thinking whether they want to get into this or not. And that's where we supported them with the catalytic funding. And as a result, they were able to raise about $61 or $62 million. And from then to now, I think Encourage Capital has been able to get around deployment of around 4,000 megawatt of rooftop solar. So this little catalytic funding can play a huge role in many, many ways. I also want to highlight knowledge sharing aspect. So we do support a lot of knowledge sharing platforms. We encourage our partners that they should they should try and work together, because there's so many ideas which exist in everybody's mind, but the goals are common. So how do we all work together towards that common goal? Not only nationally, but also we try to do this international bridging. So we support organizations in the US where they create platforms where peer learning can happen. So when, officials from here, they can go to the US, learn from what already exists, they can come here, and it's a vice versa. It's always a two-way stream. Knowledge is always shared both ways. It's never a one-way stream. We also working in a couple of other countries, Korea, Japan. We're trying to see how they can, their supply chain in India, how can they decarbonize their supply chain in India? There's so many examples. I start talking about them, we'll be short of time.
Yeah. I'm sure the audience can catch up with you over tea to talk more about these examples. But although we are running a bit over time, so maybe 2 questions from the audience. Keep it brief. Please introduce yourself, your organization, and a question. Brief question. Yeah. If it's not question, then please catch over tea or something.
Wait. I've already spoken to Jyotilar Saab. All of you have a solution. I have a solution. It will take me 2 minutes. See, we are the first 1 trillion SDG fund in the world. And I am the president of the Renewable Energy Promotion Association in India. This is a North American fund. It is purely focused on the SDG goals. And I can tell you that we are working on a ticket worth 25 billion. I can't expose more than I should have been there with you guys. But it was important for me to butt in and tell you it is very much into renewable financing. And we have a new concept at our end, which is called renewability beyond sustainability. So you need to go deeper into it. It is if I got time, I would have done it. But my only question to the panel would be, can anybody answer me if Adani Green Energy, I'm naming the company, has a debt exposure in the ESG report, the interest rates are 9.5%. And no projects in India in the renewable can survive with an interest above 5% interest rate. So even ECBs are cheaper, provided you don't put the country risk on me, 3.5%. Africa is 4%. So I have a big problem with this whole method of multilateral financing. It's not helping the countries in a big way. So small tweaking that the lady talked about is great, but we need gigawatt scale. My call centers are going to have 100 megawatt per call center in every place. And we already have loaded our electric vehicles onto the electric grid. We are polluting 77% more there. And all of that is going to be funded. So just
point taken. I think
let's get an answer on the interest rates, just on the interest.
A specific answer about a specific project, I don't think the panelists here would be able to give.
No, I have given you the right case which we have studied, which is Adani Green Energy. It is a 20 gigawatt company with assets. It will go to 40 gigawatt. Its debt exposure is 9.5%. And it's the same case with almost all corporates.
Yeah.
If I tell you the Shapoorji Group is fighting for a bridge loan, and there's 20.5% is the bank exposure to interest rates. So I'm asking a fundamental question here.
Which is very difficult to answer, right?
That is
India does require a massive gigawatt level expansion, as you mentioned. And maybe, we need to be looking deeper into it. Maybe nuclear energy, maybe some other source of energy. So certainly something to think upon and, discuss more. So one more question, please, and then we'll close it. Yeah, there's a gentleman in the front.
Yeah. Take this for the read. Or no.
I'm sorry, sir. We are not maybe on the mic.
I want to meet all of you after this. This was a great session.
Thank you. Yeah, please. There's one gentleman in the second table behind. Yeah. Your name, your organization, and your question very briefly.
Sir, my name is Sunil Kumar VK. Actually, I am a consultant, energy consultant. I am retired from TACB also as a deputy chief engineer. Okay. Now, my question is, sir, you are a finance, this one actually, finance. So you propose some projects that is especially for energy sector. There is pumped storage, battery energy, renewable, as well as floating and all. There is a more viable actually. I don't know how it is floating and all. So actually, I am a project engineer also for the floating power plant. Comparatively cost-wise, I think it is very, very high actually. And another thing, it's an infirm power actually. How the investors, it is not a firm power in the energy sector. It is an infirm power. You cannot rely actually. But how you invest actually huge way in renewable energy actually, in floating solar and all. That's what why you are proposing such projects. That's what I am. Pumped storage, probably, I think it's a very good project actually, because there is a lot of potential and investment. There is a chances also there. Other projects, how you selected actually, how you propose to solve these projects actually, whether you have any scientific study have done on this one, this is what my question. Okay, thank you.
Probably, I think probably question is directed at me. Floating solar. As I very clearly mentioned, there's a task force set out by the government of Kerala. The purpose of task force is to study it. Having said this, there are no conclusive evidence saying this many megawatt. 3,000 is the aspirational target set out by the state government. Jyotilal has left. He must be knowing more. The point is, any renewable energy without a storage backup will not be a firm power. Let's be clear. Today you're talking about solar. Solar with battery storage is the firm power. People don't intend to subscribe to power which is not firm. We just can't make so much investment in a solar power and cater to day loads. What we need is a load in the evening and peak loads. So therefore, any project conceptualization, any project formulation should always take into consideration the need for storage. So floating or ground mounted, whatever be the case, unless it has got a storage backup, it cannot be firm power. So the project is an all-comprehensive component. I think answer. Right? Awesome. Yeah. Yes.
And if I may just add to your question, I think that's a very valid question, specifically when we are looking at industrial decarbonization. So over the time when we have been engaged since the inception of National Solar Mission, the World Bank has been very closely working with MNRE. And over the time, now we have realized that, of course, after talking to grid operators and all, how difficult it could become to handle such intermittent power supply coming from RE. So storage is definitely important. But again, my suggestion is that when we are looking at storage, we have to think through various technologies that are available, because from pump storage to batteries to supercapacitors, everything has its own role to play depending on how quickly you can, bring it on grid, off grid, how long it can store, what is the commercial and financial viability parameters. And having said so, I would like to come back to what the point I made on the hydropower. So we are actually working on the ground with Himachal Pradesh, state, and looking at one of their hydropower project to complement the non-hydro RE, to look at that how hydro can play a role. Everybody says that run-of-the-river projects may not have that, potential to support the grid. But even run-of-the-river has 1 to 4 hours of storage, which is equivalent to the battery storage, but we are not utilizing it. So there are multiple, I would say, technologies that are available, which we could and should use to optimize as much as possible on the storage side, as well as to introduce newer technologies like gravity-based storage, which is being also experimented elsewhere, now getting to the commercial level. So, all those things do exist, and I think we should bank on all of that rather than picking one over another.
Yes.
I hope it helped.
Thank you. With that, we'll wrap it up. Thank you to our distinguished panel members, and thank you to the audience.